Hey, boys and girls, I am so excited about this huge 2-day lesson. That's right, 2 days. I haven't done this so far, and so this will be a new experience. Do you hear my dog drinking in the background? Are you done, Lola? Oh my goodness. Anyway, let's try this again. Huge 2-day lesson. And our purpose, or our I can statement, is I can identify the ceremonial purpose of spirituals. Now, spirituals are very near and dear to my heart. I love this style of music. I love the story behind it. And I hope some of you that like history and just things about our country, American history especially, will really get into this lesson. So first, let's look at the big picture. That's kind of what I've been calling these lessons, is the big picture of why we even have music. So there are three big picture purposes. Recreational means it's just for fun. So that would be like gaming or being productive. We just sing or whistle or dance or whatever just for fun. This is what we're going to be talking about today. Ceremonial. Ceremonial, a tradition or ritual that is done over and over again. And then lastly, artistic expression, a performance in front of an audience. So today, like I said, we're going to be focusing on one. We're going to be focusing on ceremonial. It's a tradition or ritual that is done over and over again. Some examples of ceremonial music would be spirituals, cultural music, and even Native American dance. All right, I tried to give you just a little bit of a spectrum of what that looks like. So let's get into it. Spiritual. Spiritual music helps set a mood for devotion and plays a role in morality, life, and values. So a lot of these songs are going to have a spiritual context, would have to do like with the Bible or something that you worship. We're going to take it one step further though and talk about the spirituals that were created during the slave time in American history. So let's look at this. Traditional spirituals are songs that were sung by slaves that usually had a Bible background. Some of these spirituals had double meanings. For example, going to heaven was a code for going north. When they would sing about the promised land from the Bible, that meant escaping to Canada. These songs were not written down. They were sung over and over, so people learned them. Many years later, historians came and they wrote them down. So honestly, we don't have the probably exact wording or exact melody to these songs. We have what has been carried down from generation to generation. And if you've ever played the game telephone, you know that by the time it's passed through a few people, it has changed a little bit. But in these spirituals, it gave them some direction. So the slaves would go to church if their masters went to church. They would go to church with them and they would sit outside the church building and they would be able to hear the Bible stories. Some of the stories about heroes in the Bible became heroes to them too, like Daniel in the lion's den. There's a spiritual called Didn't My Lord Deliver Daniel, Deliver Daniel, Deliver Daniel? Didn't my Lord deliver Daniel? Then why not every man? Why would slaves sing about Daniel being delivered? Because they want to be delivered. They want to be delivered out of their bondage, out of their slave times. And then there's another Bible hero, Moses. And they would sing about how Moses would go and he would free the slaves in Egypt's land. Tell, O Pharaoh, let my people go. So they want someone to say, hey, masters, let these slaves go. Everyone is created equal. Why are you treating these people this way? They are not property. They're wanting someone to take up for them. It's a sad part in our history. But it happened, and we need to learn about history so that we don't ever repeat it. We want to make sure that we understand that everyone is created equal. All right, and that's my preaching for today. So let's get into specifically the Underground Railroad. Now, was the Underground Railroad actually a railroad system that was underground? Like it was a choo-choo train and the paths went underground. Was that literally what happened? No, that is not what happened. The Underground Railroad was a system of houses and paths that the slaves, if they could escape, could go along to be able to get to freedom. Now, once you got north of the Ohio River, which lines our Kentucky border north, once you could get above the Ohio River, you were better off, but it wasn't until you crossed into Canada that you could really, really feel like that you were free and you were free at last. Because even crossing over the Ohio River, there were still people that would return the slaves for a reward. Sad times. All right. So, in these spirituals that might be about Daniel or about any of the other Bible people, they might also use words that are from the Bible but have a double meaning. So, let's look at some of these. And I'm going to talk about some other code words as well. So, here's some code words: railroad, a path slaves could take to get north to freedom. I just told you about that. The Underground Railroad wasn't literally a choo-choo train that went under the ground. It was a path that slaves could take to get north to freedom. Conductor is a person who directly transported the slaves. Very risky business indeed. The drinking gourd, which we're going to talk a lot about in this lesson, drinking gourd is the Big Dipper and the North Star. That's really important. Remember that. Slaves would not drink out of a regular cup like we think of. If they had a vessel, a bowl of water, they may had an old dried out gourd and they would dip it down in there and drink from it. They probably wouldn't have nice metal utensils and things like that. You had to kind of improvise. All right. So when they talk about the drinking gourd, that is something that the masters wouldn't have taken clue to, because they'd be like, oh yeah, they're talking about the drinking gourd over there that they drink water from. Freedom Train, that's the Underground Railroad. Jordan River is spoken about a lot in the Bible, but in the spirituals, it had a double meaning. It was a code word for Ohio River. Moses, I told you he's a hero of the Bible. He helped free, with God's help, well, with God's control, I should say, freed the slaves from Pharaoh in Egypt. So in the slave time, Moses was considered to be Harriet Tubman. That's right, a lady who is an abolitionist who wanted to abolish slavery and helped get other slaves free. Promised Land. Now, in the Bible, you hear about the Promised Land being Canaan, being filled with milk and honey. In other words, it was a place that was beautiful. It would take good care of you. You didn't want for anything. Well, that was considered to be Canada. All of these are code words. Now, I want you to listen to this video. I want you to watch it. I can't say it any better. This is amazing. This is going to be talking about the song that we're going to be getting into called Follow the Drinking Gourd. I'm also going to tell you the story behind it as well. But I want you to watch this video. I want you to really soak it in. You might even get a piece of paper out and write down what some of the code words were so that perhaps we can talk about them later when we have live lessons. Now, if this concept of code words is really like intriguing to you, I have right here where you can find more code words. So if I click right here, it takes me to a link where it talks about lots of other words that were codes for other things. So like heaven, when they'd be singing about heaven, that was actually talking about Canada or freedom. If they were talking about a load of potatoes, so that's a code, load of potatoes, they were talking about escaping slaves hidden under farm produce in a wagon. Shepherds, okay, in the Bible, they talked a lot about shepherds. Shepherds kept their flocks. People who encouraged slaves to escape and escorted them. These are all really cool. All right, and you can look up Underground Railroad secret codes and you can find even more. This is on the Harriet Tubman Historical Society that I found these. Next, I'm going to read to you the story, Follow the Drinking Gourd. Oh, this story is amazing. It tells the way that the slaves would learn songs and they would learn what the codes meant. And then that if they were brave enough, if they found an opportunity, they could try to escape. Very dangerous. Some slaves could be hung out in public for other slaves to see, just to say, hey, don't you try this too. But this story is amazing, and this is where we're going to end the part one for this lesson. Be sure that you watch the video on this page and that you've listened to all the video on this page. It's very important. And you might want to write down some questions that you have, and you can put them in the stream for me later. All right. So after you finish this, it'll be the end of today's lesson, and you can mark as done in your Google Classroom assignment.